Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is former BC Cabinet Minister Rafe Mair. Welcome to the show, Rafe.
It's always a pleasure, Jim.
I noticed your headline on your blog. Prime Minister Harper says LNG tankers are far too dangerous for East Coast use, but they're okay for British Columbia. What gives?
Well, I really don't know. It's not a news story, incidentally, Jim. Owen Finn and I have been talking about this now for many months, but I can't for the life of me understand it. What's the difference? The coast on the east, the coast on the west, the both part of Canada. The dangers are the same. The exposures are the same. It absolutely bewilders me.
And, of course, Canadians aren't very good at their own history. They forget about the great Halifax explosion, the largest non-atomic explosion in the world. It happened in 1917 when a munitions ship and a fuel ship collided in Halifax Harbour during the First World War. A horrible loss of life. Well, at least they still had the Navy back then on the Coast Guard. We don't have a Coast Guard base in Vancouver to deal with these things.
Well, that's exactly right. I might say we had a minor version here with the Green Hill Park. Now, it did it all on its own. Kind of interestingly, the crew kept some booze in a locker, and it was apparently pretty raw liquor, and somebody went in with a lit cigarette, and up she went. But my point only is that boats blow up. As long as you have human error, you've got boats hitting things, rocks, and so on and so forth. And you're quite right, Joe. We do not have the facilities here to look after these kinds of things. But I want to make another point to your listeners. If you take a look at the maps, and you can take a look at the Common Sense Canadian today, and you'll see one of them for Howe Sound, you'll see that the danger areas, the red lines as it were, run right up across Bowen Island, Gambier Island. Matter of fact, they run right over where I live in Lions Bay, right up the Sea to Sky Highway. So we're talking about the possibility of tankers hitting the shore in a very real way. This isn't any kind of pie in the sky. And as you say, we haven't got the facilities to look after it. And even if we do, the damage could be so great in the initial stages that it would only be a matter of cleaning up, not doing anything about protecting the people. Now, we've got here, of course, we've got wood fiber LNG hoping to start up soon. Their shills, Stuart Muir with Resources Work, they're talking to us like there's nobody near. He actually says there are very few people near this. Well, I don't know what he thinks, but I'm sitting looking right out now, and I'm right in the danger zone. It really is a preposterous situation, and I think the public is waking up. I guess you're giving me a chance to shill my own case here, Jim, but, we're not a bunch of raggedy Andes here. We're an awful lot of just ordinary, everyday citizens, and we're rising as one and saying, wait a minute, Mr. Harper, wait a minute, Ms. Clark, you are putting in direct danger citizens of this province. Now, as you pointed out earlier, Mr. Harper is saying, well, look, if that happens to happen on the East Coast, we can't have that happen. But Rafe Mair and all his friends in Lions Bay, West Vancouver, etc., they're expendable.
Didn't he say that when he shut the Coast Guard base, the busiest Coast Guard base in Canada?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. And, I guess we're all used to it out here in the sense that, I've lived here all my life, and I'm used to people in Ottawa not paying much attention to what goes on out here. Our famous mayor back in the 30s, Jerry McGeer, said it's 2,500 miles from Vancouver to Ottawa, but it's 25,000 miles from Ottawa to Vancouver. And he was absolutely right. So this is nothing new. However, this is the first time I can remember a prime minister saying, we will put in danger some of our citizens if they're on the West Coast. We'll make sure they're in no danger if they're on the East Coast. Now, when you analyze that just for 10 seconds, Jim, that's an appalling statement by the leader of our country. Their lives are much more valuable in Eastern Canada than they are in Western Canada, and that's just appalling.
Well, they also closed one of the maritime rescue radio centers on the island, and the very first weekend where they had centralized it, the radios didn't work.
Oh, you see, this is the one thing that I find very tiresome in the whole exercise. Nobody wants to admit of human error. That's the most common cause of all the problems we have. It will never go away. We're all human, Jim. You are in what you do, I am in what I do, and we've all made lots of mistakes. When you make a mistake with an LNG tanker, however, it's not just like hitting the wrong button on a radio station. It's a big-time problem. And, you're talking, and quite rightly, about our inability to deal with these things when they happen. My point is, we shouldn't have them happen in the first place. Now, the resources works people who are, let's say, shilling for the LNG plant to come. Incidentally, do you realize one of the sponsors of Resource Works is the Vancouver province, who are part of the Post Media, so presumably both the Vancouver Sun and the Vancouver province are behind this LNG plant in Squamish, and in the meantime, we're trying to get stories in and so on. You can imagine how we stack up against the others. Now I've lost my train of thought, but that appalled me. I took a look at their list of supporters today, and I thought, my God, what's happened in the media?
Well, also, too, if you're going to rely on technology to protect us, when they took the personnel out of the lighthouses and were bragging about how robots could do the job, they held a news conference at Lighthouse Park in West Vancouver. Well, there was a fog bank that went right up to the edge of the water, but where the lighthouse was, where the robot ran it, there wasn't any fog. So it didn't sound the foghorn, even though it was terrifically foggy.
Well, so these things happen all the time when you start to think we can do these things automatically by robot and so on. You have to have people involved in these things. When you do, you run a risk. But you run a greater risk, as you just pointed out, if you leave it to somebody that hasn't got any real sense about the whole picture, just the part that happens to hit its button. And, I guess, Jim, what I've been trying to say for a long time is we have to waken up out here. We're not talking about some sort of airy-fairy, a distant maybe problem. We're talking about asking for a hell of a lot of trouble. Fraser River, we're going to put now 200 barges and freighters into Tilbury up the Fraser River. That's the best salmon river in the entire bloody world. There is bound to be an accident. It has to happen mathematically, and we're not waking up to this. And so we're still listening to the chivalrous of the government saying, "Oh no, we have to look after our personal pockets too. We must exploit our resources, and the world is waiting for us." Well, I just say to people, think. Start to think.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rafe Mair. Rafe, is there anything we can do? I mean, in Vancouver, people think their votes count, but really, if you don't vote for the Conservatives, they don't like to do much for you.
Well, this is interesting, Jim, because we've got the federal election coming up, but we still got the province and the provincial government for 2 years, and they're hell-bent for election to get these things done. We've tried to contact Premier Clark, and we've tried to say to her, look, in our case, other people will have to fight their own battles, and we'll help them out as much as we can. We hope they help us. But in the meantime, we have to direct our attention to this Squamish LNG. And we say, look, Premier, first of all, the company Woodfibre is run by a crook. Now, I say that advisedly, except it's been we printed the paper, all the rest of it. There's never been a hint of a lawsuit. And if you just Google Tenoto, the guy, and go to the Guardian newspaper, in respectable newspapers, you'll find out that he is. He's a tax cheat, and he's a crook, and he's a despoiler of the environment. That's number one, Ms. Clark. Number two, you've got these freighters coming through areas that the most conservative scientists say There is no way they should go through there. They're in danger areas. They simply shouldn't happen. Now, why are you putting the people of British Columbia, particularly my neighbors, why are you putting us to this risk? How can you say there's enough money in the world to take care of these risks that you're posing? And it's alarming. I think, however, Jim, people are starting to wake up and they're starting to come to the party. This isn't the usual kind of protest in the past. This is real down-to-earth danger to people, and we care. Now, getting back to your question, what can we do? Well, I'm not so sure that we're going to make it in the electoral world. I hope we do, because like you, I'm a Democrat, and I want to see things run democratically. But I have said in print over and over again, I say it again now, we will, unless there's a radical change in the provincial government particularly, we will be down to civil disobedience, and I can tell you in this part of the world, it'll be big time.
Yes, we've seen people get organized. They said you couldn't get rid of the HST, and that happened.
Well, you also saw the people of Burnaby rise up against Kinder Morgan, and that fight's not over, but they shocked the hell out of a whole lot of people, not just Kinder Morgan, but people in Alberta and people all over this province who didn't think that it could happen. And I could sense from my perch, and I don't know whether you could from yours, that the people were changing as that went on. First of all, there were a lot of people saying, oh, well, get out of the way, it's just a pipeline, et cetera. By the time it went on for a while, and the people listened to what Kinder Morgan was saying, watched what was happening, people started to say, wait a minute, if that happened in my park, in my neighborhood, down my street, and was there forever and ever and a day until it burst, what would I be doing? And this is exactly what's happening in my part of the world. People are saying, no, we do not accept these assurances. And I know I'm talking too much, but let me just put this other thing to people. Do you people believe that there could be an accident? Not it will be, could be. Do you believe there could be? Well, if you believe there could be, that means it's only a matter of time. It may be tomorrow, it may not be for 100 years, but sooner or later, it's going to happen. Now you have to say, well, now, yeah, but if it's just going to be a minor thing, but it isn't. If it was just going to be a minor thing, well, people would run that risk. But you're running the risk of very serious damage and loss of life. So why in the hell do we want to do this?
Well, there was a coal-carrying ship that ran into the brand-new jetty that they'd built at Deltaport and cut it in half. And I know on the ads they say our tankers will be tethered to a tugboat. Well, that was tethered to a tugboat, and it still sliced the causeway in half.
It has to happen, Jim. As I say, it's human error. Nobody is saying there's evil involved in there, but it's a matter of human error, and it's got to happen.
And, of course, imagine if terrorists did take over one of those LNG ships. I mean, that is a traveling bomb.
Well, of course it is. And as I say, these things are inevitable. We have to understand that, and we have to make our governments understand. And the reason I talked a moment ago, Jim, and I've got to run, unfortunately, but the reason I talked a moment ago about civil disobedience, nobody wants that. Everybody wants their government to behave in a democratic way. We have two representatives here, one in the provincial government, one in the federal government. Neither of them have done a single solitary thing to raise these concerns with their governments or answer our questions. When you get that kind of frustration setting in, and you see danger to your families and your communities, then civil disobedience is the only thing left to do.
Rafe, thank you very much for chatting with us. My guest has been former BC Cabinet Minister Rafe Mair. His website, rafeonline.com. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.